in your dreams.
Hey guys, this is Lance with Farmore, and today I'm going to be doing a breakdown on a recent spec ad we did for Corvette. So this idea actually came from a meeting we had with another local agency here in Tampa, and they had a client they were wanting to pitch to. They asked us if we had an automotive reel that we could send the client. From that meeting, it became clear that we had a gap in our current portfolio. And while we did have some work that was in the automotive field, it was kind of few and far between. So we took it upon ourselves to actually create a spec ad using internal resources and internal time to basically serve as a proof of concept so that we could pitch to future agencies to say, yeah, we can do car ads. It also helps that we had easy access to a Corvette. So for this production, we actually had a really clear vision of how we wanted it to look and feel. We knew we were working with a black Corvette that kind of had this mystery to it. So the idea of light and shadow was something that really kind of became apparent right away, that we wanted to embrace sort of the mystery of the car. We gleaned inspiration from another ad that was produced by CAV Productions that they did for Aston Martin. And that really kind of served as the bedrock of what we knew we could do internally. We've actually linked that below for you to check out. Having just recently moved into our offices, we knew we had a blank kind of studio space to work with. So it's about a 35 by 35 room that essentially is just a shell right now. We're still in the process of building out the studio. So for us, it was kind of the perfect opportunity to bring the car in, be able to kind of move the lights around as we saw fit, and do our best to film a bulk of the ad in the studio space. Because this was an internal resource project for us, we really didn't have any budget to throw at this other than internal resources. So keeping it here helped eliminate studio costs. Because our Corvette was black, we really wanted to play into that darker, mysterious aesthetic and kind of play with light and shadow to create contrast. The car almost has a stealth fighter look to it and is very menacing when silhouetted. We opted for a combination of nighttime city scenes and studio sequences to maintain the mystery of the car. Filming at night also helped us to mask the driver, and since this was all supposed to be in the dog's imagination, it helped sell the comedic payoff by not showing a person inside the vehicle. So in pre-production, we used Milanote to create a storyboard for the project. Milanote has proven to be a really awesome resource for us because it allows for real-time collaboration and also has a ton of different templates for you to follow. It's really tailored for creative professionals. It makes the ideation and pre-production process a lot less complicated. We actually first heard about Milanote from Danny Gaversa's YouTube channel. Danny has a really awesome video breaking down how he utilizes Milanote in his productions. We've linked that for you to check out as well. So as I mentioned earlier, we knew we wanted to film a majority of this in our studio to help cut costs. The only downside to that is it's a relatively small to medium-sized studio space. So we really didn't know getting into this how the car would look inside the space and how we would be able to kind of work around the limitations of the space. And while ideally it would have been great to have a larger studio space, I'm really happy with what we were able to get. For our lighting setup, we kept it really simple. Since the studio is still under construction, we actually didn't have a grid to operate from. So what we did is we hung a 300D directly above the car to act as our top light. Initially, we actually had some difficulty with reflections on the car based on where it was positioned. And so with a combination of skirting the car and actually moving the car forward a bit, we were able to get rid of those reflections to get that really cool match cut shot that you see in the ad. We also utilized a light panel's Gemini to really act as our core sort of motivating light. The Gemini was great for adding those flickers that you see in the ad, for adding any color washes that you see. It really was kind of a diverse light that we used as almost like a utility to add suspense or add in-camera effects when we needed them. And lastly, we used a set of Nanlite Pavo tubes. These kind of added shape and definition to some of the scenes. There's actually a shot of the Corvette logo where, you can kind of see the red sort of skirt across the logo to reveal the logo. And those were the Pavo tubes at work. Again, because of limited resources, we knew that we weren't able to maybe fully invest in a beefy car mount setup that we could actually mount to the Corvette. So we knew for some of these shots, because of time and because of resources, it would be better to film them in the studio than actually trying to get them on location. For our camera setup, we utilized our trusty Sony FX6. This has been an absolute workhorse camera for us. Any environment that we've thrown it in, it's done an excellent job at just kind of being the right tool for the job. It's small, it's lightweight, it fits into tight to fit spaces, which for us, especially working in this small space, was really invaluable. One kind of important thing to note is we really wanted to capture the actual vibe of what we were going for. We knew we were going for a darker aesthetic. So we kind of intentionally kept our lighting a little bit dim inside of the space just to have it feel like we're really in that natural environment. And so we actually shot at a base ISO of 12,800. And this allowed us to dimly lit the scene to create that contrast and create that light and shadow that we were going for with this. We're in a small studio space, there's white walls, light is bouncing off of everything. And so being able to control the amount of light that we're outputting really helped us by shooting at that base of 12,800. We also utilized our Sony a7S III on our Tiltra Hydra Alien car mount. And this camera is an absolute beast for its size. It does the same things our FX6 does, but in a much lighter weight package. So once the studio production was wrapped, we had some additional things that we needed to film. Really the biggest thing and the whole crux of the ad hinges on this dog that we're seeing sort of all of this, that he's imagining what's being seen in the ad. He's imagining he's driving the car. And so we had an additional half production day filming the dog sort of in the garage where this whole scene happens. When we got there, we kind of looked at the space, figured out sort of the shots that we needed to get, and then started our lighting. We threw a 600D outside to blast light into the garage, and then hung 2 Quasar tubes on the actual garage track to act as fluorescent lighting. From there, we set up our light panels Gemini to act as the key light. It kind of took some time to get the right vibe set, but once we had a look that we were happy with, we were ready to get going. One quick tip actually about this scene is that because we were filming at daytime, we had a lot of natural light still spilling in from the windows of the garage. So what we actually did was we balanced the camera to 3200 Kelvin, and our contrasting lights were at 5600 Kelvin. So we basically flipped it and inverted it and used the natural light to our advantage to make it look like nighttime. So essentially the 5600 Kelvin lights were acting as moonlight. This is a great tip because sometimes you can't always fully control the time of day that you have to film in. And in this instance, we were very much limited by a window of time that we had. And speaking of challenges when we're working with small budgets, working with an untrained dog definitely can be challenging. One workaround that we had from this was that we filmed this scene from a lot of different angles, just because we weren't really sure how this would actually cut together. Don't get me wrong, Dabo is the office dog. We love him to death, but he is not a stage actor. Not even close.
He's terrible.
He's terrible. With that being said, we filmed it from multiple angles with the intentionality of being able to kind of work around the dog in post. The end result is a really simple 2 or 3 shot scene, but it actually does its job in selling the comedic effect that we wanted. So now that we had a bulk of the ad filmed, we had one additional night to capture the Corvette driving through downtown Tampa. This was skeleton crew at its finest. 3 people, 2 vehicles. We made it happen. I was driving the car. Our DP Andres was manning the Ronin RS2 on the Tilta Hydra Alien mount with his phone as we were talking to Luke, who was driving the Corvette. Let me urge to you, this is not the safest way to do this type of production. That being said, we did take proper safety precautions to make sure we were driving smart and not reckless. The fastest speed that we actually went to was about 40 miles an hour. So we had actually planned to film this on a Sunday night because historically, downtown Tampa area, Sunday nights usually are the sleepiest nights. That being said, we show up, it's absolutely packed. There was a game, events, all kinds of stuff happening downtown. So our plan of it being this sleepy, quiet night turned into this hustle bustle environment. So we knew pretty much right when we got there that we probably needed to reassess where we were actually filming these sequences. So what we opted to do was actually take an expressway that went from downtown to a neighboring suburb. And so what this allowed us to do was have long stretches of road with very minimal traffic, which obviously kept us safe, but allowed us to kind of do moves in sequential order very quickly. The challenge we were having was there was a lot of stop and go, there was cars in the frame, there was just a lot happening. So by being on the freeway, it just really opened up a lot of possibilities, and we were actually able to get everything that we needed to get in about a half hour. It just goes to show you that sometimes you can plan to a T how you think something's gonna go, but you have to be willing to be flexible when you get to set. After we got the core shots with the Tilta mount, we actually did throw a small mount with the A7S on the Corvette. And what we did is we did some long exposure stuff in camera where we had the shutter speed at 1/10 of a second. And this looks really, really funny when you play it back at 24 frames. But what happens when you speed it up is it kind of stretches the light, almost think like a time lapse or a hyperlapse effect in camera. And so this really created the effect of speed that we wanted, this visceral sense. Once we completed the car mount footage, the last thing to get was aerials. We actually took the drone up and looked for a couple of quiet one-way streets and had the Corvette go up and down in a repetitive motion until we got what we needed. I'm really glad we took the time to do these aerial shots because I feel like they're a really great differentiating factor that helps break up some of the monotony of the rest of the edit. So once the filming was done, we jumped straight into post-production. Here at Farmore, we utilize DaVinci Resolve to edit in, and it's simply an awesome platform. Coming from someone who's used Premiere Pro for many, many years, Resolve and its capabilities are just light years ahead of Premiere. It's also a much more stable platform, so we've been really, really happy with DaVinci Resolve. In pre-production, again, we really wanted this mysterious, dark, moody aesthetic, but also the Corvette to really just have this menacing presence to it. So we knew that we wanted the edit to have a really visceral sense to it. Sound design was key for this. We utilized ArtGrid for a bulk of the sounds that you actually hear in the video. We did actually record some Corvette sounds in studio, but a majority of what you hear is from ArtGrid. I mentioned earlier too about being able to do poor man's process in the studio, and in the post side, this really, really helped add to the feel of what you're seeing, especially when you add sound design. So doing actual camera shake in camera, not having to rely just on post, but having a template to work from, proved invaluable because then we actually had a solid reference point in terms of the camera shake that we were adding in post. We knew how those needed to kind of play together. Also, the streaking of lights and the movement of lights really helped move the edit along, so it kind of gave this propelling motion throughout. There was never really a shot where it was static and there wasn't something happening in frame that was drawing your attention. And obviously, since we're already working in Resolve, we kept the color in Resolve as well. Resolve is an incredible resource for color. And so for us, we shot an S-Log3 for this project and then did a color space transform to convert that to Rec 709. From there, really the grading process was pretty simple because we kept so much of in camera how we wanted it to look in post. So we made sure we exposed for how we were going to grade. The end result is a color grade that really does feel cohesive throughout the entire ad. And I think it really does help kind of add to that mystery that we knew we wanted to have with this darker aesthetic. So that's the breakdown. Overall, we are super pleased with what we were able to achieve inside of a small studio space with very limited resources and virtually no budget. For us, I think the biggest win is that we proved to ourselves that we could in fact film a car ad here at our studio. And we were able to add a really high quality deliverable to our portfolio. So be sure to let us know in the comments section what you thought of the ad and if there are any questions that you might have that we didn't cover in this video. Thanks for checking out our BTS breakdown of this Corvette spec ad. Remember to like and subscribe as we'll have a lot more content coming up. See you on the next one.